Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your Bible Big Brother Christian. This is day 19 of our ESV year through the ESV Study Bible. We are finishing up the book of Genesis today. Man, that is awesome. Before we go on, when this is published, it'll be published on January 19th, Monday, January 19th. And that is my mother's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom. I love you so much. Thanks for all your support. Um, I know I was not the best of your children while I was, inside the house. But look at what the Lord has done. So happy birthday, Mom. Love you. All right. Yes. So we are continuing our series through the ESV Study Bible. We've we are going to complete the book of Genesis today. So far, we looked at Genesis chapter 1, the creation week, and then saw in chapter 2 a magnified view of what happened on day 6 with God creating the man and the woman, places them into the Garden of Eden. But then in chapter 3, there is a fall. And from that fall, there is cursing, but God also gives hope that there will be an offspring of the woman who will crush the head of the serpent, and but the serpent would also bruise his heel. And so we go on a journey throughout the book of Genesis looking for this offspring. Who would this offspring be? And we go through and we try to find who's offspring and who's going to reverse the curse. And so we go and try to find that offspring. Uh, and we continuously see that, hey, this is not the one, this is not the one, this is not the one, this is not the one. We finally come to a man named Abram, who seems to have a special relationship with God. And God starts to orient our minds to not simply looking for the offspring, but being kind of focused on the uh, descendants of this particular man, Abram, because God continues to promise him descendants that will outnumber the stars in the sky and the sand uh, on the sand in the sea and in the dust of the earth. Um, and so we start focusing on these descendants, and sometimes we're trying to see if they're the offspring as well. But there seems to be something that God is going to do with these descendants. So we look at his son Isaac, and we look at his son Jacob, and Jacob's family. Jacob has a large family that is where he has 12 sons and one daughter. Um, and then we find out he has a favorite son. His favorite son is a young man named Joseph. Um, and there might be many reasons why he's his favorite son. One reason may be because he is the son of his favorite wife, the oldest son of his favorite wife. But also, too, he seems to have a righteousness about him. And also, too, he seems to have a very special relationship with God. And seems to be very skillful because everywhere he goes, he rises to the top. Now, Jacob has a fondness towards his son Joseph, but his other children do not have a fondness towards Joseph, and because of that, they decide to sell him into slavery. As they sell him into slavery, um, we take a pause from the story about Joseph, and um, we look at Judah and his sons and their interaction with a young woman named Tamar. And Tamar marries Judah's oldest son, and he is wicked in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord kills him. And so Judah asked his second son, Onan, to uphold the Levirate marriage, where he would impregnate Tamar and give her a son, who would keep the name of alive, um, and that son would end up inheriting what um, all that Judah had and what was coming to him. And because of that, Onan did not want to fulfill his duties. He did uh, take advantage of Tamar's body, but did not want to fulfill uh, his duties that would have taken care of her. And so, because of that, God struck him down as well. With that, Judah is scared to give Tamar his third son because he's had two sons interact with her, and both of those sons died. And so, though he has a responsibility towards her, and he even tells her that he will give his third son to her, but he does not. And because of this, Tamar kind of deceives Judah into sleeping with her, and he impregnates her, and that is a watershed moment for him because we saw a downward spiral of Judah, and it was at this moment that he found out that he impregnated Tamar that we start to see his life turn around. And from there, as we go on and we get back to Joseph's story, where he goes from the pit to Potiphar's house, who bought him as a slave. And from there, he is falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, goes to the prison. At the prison, he shows his gifting of God. And because of his relationship with God, shares the interpretations that God gives him of dreams. And that lands him into the palace with Pharaoh. Pharaoh makes him the number 2 in the land. And after 7 years of plenty, Joseph is in charge of disseminating the grain that he had stored up during the 7 years of plenty for the 7 years of famine. And from this, his brothers come to Egypt, all except for Benjamin, to buy food. He recognizes them, but they do not recognize him. So Joseph kind of plays some games with them a little bit to try to see and understand if they have changed at all. And through 2 large interactions with his brothers, we start to see that they changed. And no one changed more than Judah. Judah went from suggesting that his brother Joseph should be sold into slavery to, as we saw yesterday, or a couple of days ago, he got to the place to where he was trying to negotiate with Joseph to allow him to go into slavery, Judah, to go into slavery in order to protect their youngest brother, Benjamin. And at this, we saw that Joseph could not hold back his emotions, and he revealed himself to his brothers. And in doing so, he invites his father and the rest of their family to come and live in Egypt, in the land of Goshen. And that is where they are. And so there's been a few interactions with Jacob in Egypt. But that sets us up for our final 3 chapters in the book of Genesis, chapters 48 to 50. And we will get it going. Genesis chapter 48 to chapter 50. After this, Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it was told to Jacob, "Your son Joseph has come to you." Then Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, 'Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession. And now your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers and their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons, whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face. And behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Then Joseph removed them from his knees and bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand, toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and he left and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys, and in them let my name be carried on, in the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he took his father's hand and moved it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this one is the firstborn. Put your hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you Israel will pronounce blessings, saying, God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh." Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you, rather than to your brothers, one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow." Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather yourselves, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down and crouched as a lion and as a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider falls backward. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Raiders shall raid Gad, and he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful bow, a fruitful bow. Uh, sorry, Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile, but the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you, with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of your parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and at evening dividing the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field at Machpelah, at the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, I am about to die, and my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now, therefore, let me please go up to bury my father. Then I will return. And Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a great and grievous lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning and the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. Therefore the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite, to possess a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, Please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of their father. Joseph wept when he spoke to them. His brothers also came and fell before him and said, Behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years, and Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit and bring you up out of the land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being buried 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. This is the word of the Lord. All right. So I think we got the wrong stuff set up here, man. What are we doing? All right. Here we go. Sorry about that, y'all. Got stuff set up from yesterday. Got to get the new stuff set up, man. The new stuff set up. I think we're gonna kind of breeze through this this evening. So, all right. Chapter 48, verses 1 to 22. Jacob's blessing of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. When Jacob is very old and close to death, he pronounces a variety of blessings on all his sons. The first part of this process is recorded in this chapter and focuses specifically on Joseph and his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Immediately following this, all of Jacob's other sons gather around his bed in order to be blessed. While chapters 48 and 49 stand together, the events of chapter 48, verses 1 to 22, set Joseph and his younger son Ephraim apart from all the other brothers. In particular, Ephraim receives from Jacob the blessing of the firstborn, indicating that the special line traced throughout Genesis will continue through his descendants. See Introduction, History of Salvation Summary. Various elements within chapter 48 are reminiscent of how Jacob was blessed by his father Isaac. Chapter 27, verses 1 to 40. All right, chapter 48, verses 1 and 2. The opening verses suggest that Joseph merely comes with his two sons to visit his father, who is ill. There's no hint at this stage of the important developments that are about to take place. Chapter 48, verses 37. Jacob speaks to Joseph, picking up on three distinctive issues. First, he refers to the theophany, his vision of God at Bethel, recalling the all-important promises made to him by God. See Genesis chapter 28, verses 13 to 15, right? This is when Joseph saw the angels ascending and descending in and out of heaven there. Second, Jacob elevates his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to the status of full sons on par with Reuben and Simeon, chapter 48, verse 5. Later, this will result in Joseph's descendants through Ephraim and Manasseh being viewed as two separate tribes. Consequently, when the land of Canaan is allocated, Joseph, through his descendants, receives 1/6 of the territory. This double portion of the inheritance confirms that Joseph was designated the firstborn in place of Reuben. See First Chronicles chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Also note on Genesis chapter 35, 22 and to 23. I'm going to read the note on Genesis 35 there, because I can't quite recall what might be referencing. Okay. That note has to do with Reuben laying with Bilhah. Yeah. So, and from that, him replacing Reuben because of that incident. Where was I at? Okay. By naming Ephraim before Manasseh cross-reference chapter 48, verse 1, Jacob anticipates that anticipates what will transpire in verses 13 to 19. Third, Jacob recalls the death of Joseph's mother, Rachel, verse 7, following their return from northern Mesopotamia. See note on chapter 35, verses 16 to 20. 35, 16 and 20. Okay. The note here says Jacob traveled south from Bethel, undoubtedly with the intention of going to Mamre, Hebron. His journey is disrupted, however, when Rachel dies while giving birth. The name that Rachel gives her newborn is Ben-Oni. Where is man? Okay, wait a minute. Yeah. All right. And then Padan is an abbreviated form of Padan Aram. Chapter 48, verses 8 to 10. Like the eyesight of his father Isaac, Jacob's eyesight has deteriorated in old age. See chapter 27, verse 1. For this reason, he finds it difficult to clearly identify Joseph's two sons. Um, yeah, so if we go back to Isaac um, and his blessing of his sons, it was because of deception that he ended up blessing the younger above the older. Here, there's no deception. Um, Joseph knows exactly what he's doing, and he was the younger. It was blessed above the older, and so he's going to continue that pattern. By placing his right hand on the head of Ephraim, however, Jacob gives him priority over his older brother Manasseh. Although Joseph protests, thinking his father has mistakenly placed his right hand on the wrong head, chapter 48, verses 17 to 18, Jacob is emphatic that Ephraim shall be blessed at the first as the firstborn ahead of Manasseh, verse 19. Subsequent history reveals that the Ephraimites become one of the leading tribes with Joshua guiding the people into the promised land. But the Ephraimites are later rejected by God in favor of Judah. See Psalm chapter 78, verses 67 to 71. Let's see. All right. Chapter 48, verses 21 and 22. Jacob anticipates that after his death, his family will return to the land of Canaan. Verse 21. To Joseph alone, he bequeaths one mountain slope that he has taken by force from the Amorites. Verse 22. Possibly referring to chapter 34, verses 25 to 29. Cross reference chapter 33, verses 18 to 19. And Joseph's burial, Joshua chapter 24, verse 32. I want to look at that because when I was reading this, I was like, the mountain slope. What's going on? So let's go back and take a look. All right, so let's look at 33 to 34. All right, and then let's add the verse numbers. Let me make sure I know which ones. So 33, 18, and 19. Okay. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought a 400. He bought for 400 pieces of money a piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. So here, I mean, he's basically buying real estate in this section. And then it says chapter 34, 25 to 29. On the third day, I mean, this is talking about his sons plundering the city. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons, Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while while it felt secure and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses they captured. So that doesn't say anything about Jacob, though. It has been taken by force. So the mountain slope could be the real estate that he purchased. Why I say it was taken by force, though? Moreover, I have given to you, rather than to your brothers, one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. I talked about his sons using their sword, and that didn't seem to be a good thing to him at the time. Yeah. I'm sorry if you're listening and not looking. Well, even if you're looking, I'm trying to figure this out. So at times, it's part of the series. I am learning along with you guys. So if I get to something where I just don't quite understand, it might take me a little bit. So, but okay. All right. Let's look at the Joshua passage. Joshua chapter 24, verse 32. Okay. As for the bones of Joseph, which the people of Israel brought up from Egypt, they buried them at Shechem, in the piece of land that Jacob bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver. Of money. It became an inheritance. Yeah, this is so. And so in the book of Joshua, they are referring to what happened in chapter 33, where he purchased the land. And I guess the language that Jacob uses here, that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and my bow, it I don't know. I've discussed here sometimes that the culturally, or sometimes there are things that are done with the biblical writers that don't quite fit so neatly with how we do things in our culture, and he could be in one line saying both things, right? That, hey, here's land that I own, I got from the Amorites. And the price I paid, I personally bought it. And because of the actions of your brothers, it is said that I've took it with my sword and bow. So now I think about it though, hey, that this Genesis 34, doesn't it say all the sons are there? So was Joseph there too? Doesn't leave Joseph out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. The sons of Jacob. Was Joseph among the number? All right. I don't know. Maybe. Okay. Let's get to chapter 49. Chapter 49, verses 1 to 28. Jacob blesses Jacob. Sorry, guys. Man. It's another one of these late night / early mornings doing this for me. So my apologies for my tongue being tied, tongue twisted, brain slow. My apologies. All right. Chapter 49, verses 1 to 28. Jacob blesses his 12 sons. Close to death, Jacob pronounces on each of his sons a blessing that, reflecting something of their past actions, tells how their descendants will prosper in the future, passing from oldest to youngest, with one exception. Jacob clearly anticipates that Judah and Joseph will outshine their brothers in importance. Together, their blessings make up about half of Jacob's speech. The pronouncements are presented using poetic imagery and language, sometimes with wordplays, which occasionally make them difficult to interpret precisely. Chapter 49, verses 1 and 2. After blessing Joseph and his 2 sons, Jacob summons all his other sons together in order to indicate their future destinies. Jacob's words are viewed by the narrator as being more than mere wishes. There is a predictive element to them, for they concern days to come, that is, in the distant future, sometimes translated in the latter days. Okay? It says, see note on Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2. I'll go there real quick. Off screen. Okay. Oh man, we're a page away. The pages are stuck. There we go. Okay. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2. The note says, the latter days is an expression for the future beyond the horizon. For example, Numbers chapter 24, verse 15, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 30, Daniel chapter 2, verse 28, which sometimes refers specifically to the time of the Messiah, Hosea chapter 3, verse 5. It is not immediately clear here whether Isaiah is so specific, but the way Isaiah 11, 4 echoes chapter 2, verse 4 shows that the oracle speaks of the Messianic era. New Testament authors use the various Greek translations of the expression, generally rendered in the last days, in the belief that since Jesus inaugurated his messianic kingship by his resurrection, the latter days have arrived in a decisive way. While at the same time, the last days await their complete realization and final fulfillment at the end of the age. Isaiah's future orientation in this section is also marked by his sevenfold use of in that day, and the Lord of hosts has a day, the near and distant future. All right. So, yeah. Um, so there's a distant future in which certain things would happen. It's interesting reading this and really slowing down and paying attention to it. This is really the first time I've really paid attention to it. I think the last few years, as I've gotten to this point of Genesis, I've probably been so excited just to finish that I didn't take as much time like thinking about and trying to understand um, each pronouncement for each son. And so there's some interesting things in each pronouncement. So yeah, let's get to them. All right, chapter 49, verses 3-4. Although Reuben, as the firstborn, ought to be preeminent, his special standing within the family is fortified because of his shocking behavior with Jacob's servant wife, Bilhah. Right? And we saw Reuben went in and slept with Bilhah, and that angered Jacob. Okay. Now, something that I did notice, right? And so as he gives this, right, unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence. Um, so this is 49, chapter 4, or sorry, chapter 49, verse 4. Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. All right. So you defiled it. You messed it up. You made it unclean. You did something that should not have been done. Right. And that was just him, sleeping with his with uh, Bilhah, right? So his father's servant wife, right? Now, so let's go back. So chapter 35, verses 22 to 23. Let's go back real quick and look at it. And then I want to see something else. All right, 35, 22 to 23. Those of you who are looking at the screen know where I'm going, but those of you who are listening, just enjoy the ride. All right. So Genesis chapter 35, verse 22 to 23. While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Okay. Now, we get one sentence. One sentence. Reuben, actually, no, let's see. Let's explain that out. Let's go to 30. All right. Okay, yeah, we only get one sentence. Okay, all right. So we get one sentence. Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Right. There's no talk of anything nefarious going on outside that, outside the fact that Reuben shouldn't um, be, laying with his father's wife, no matter if it's, regular wife or his father's slave. He shouldn't be laying with her, right? But there seems to be nothing non-consensual about the laying with. Okay, and if we go back and look at 49 verse 4, right? It says, you shall not have preeminence because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. Okay. You did something in my bed that you should not have done. If you go back up to Genesis chapter 34, verses 25 to 29, really looking at verse 27, the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. So, you guys remember when we spoke about what was going on in Genesis chapter 34, I posed the idea that maybe Dinah was not raped. Maybe there was no sexual assault. Maybe she was seduced by Shechem, went along with it, and because of their culture, that was a huge deal. So huge that the brothers were, ready to take the whole city. And you have the same term, defiled, used for what was done in Jacob's bed by Reuben, and what was done to Dinah. Okay, defiled and defiled. So at least that's how it's translated in the ESV. For the sake of time, we're not going to go through and try to figure out the Hebrew. But for those of you who are much smarter than I am and maybe want to look further into it, you can do so. Alrighty. Moving on. Chapter 49, verses 5 to 7. Jacob's pronouncement regarding Simeon and Levi centers on their violent disposition. Undoubtedly, this relates back to their treatment of the men of Shechem, right, which we were just reading, whom they massacred on account of the humiliation of their sister Dinah, chapter 34. Distancing himself from their fierce anger and cruel wrath, Jacob indicates that their descendants will be scattered throughout the other tribes. Chapter 49, verse 7. As a result, their strength will be dissipated, preventing them from bringing destruction on Israel. In fulfillment of this, the Levites, whose inheritance will be their ministry at the sanctuary, receive 48 cities distributed throughout all the tribal areas. Numbers chapter 18, verses 23 to 24. Chapter 35, verses 1 to 8. Joshua chapter 21, verses 1 to 45. And so I've known this about the Levites, right? That they don't actually get a portion of land, right? Where a specific territory just for Levites. So, spoiler the story as it unfolds later on. The every tribe gets its own section of land within the borders, right? So almost like their own state. Okay, but the Levites do not get that. They get little pockets. So I knew that about the Levites. Let's see what the note says about Simeon. And the Simeonites obtained land within the territory taken by Judah. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Yes, these arrangements prevented either tribe from dominating the rest. Wow. And there's an event that happens in Exodus, if I remember this correctly, and I want to come back to this this pronouncement in Genesis 49 when we get there, if I'm remembering it correctly. So when we get there, I want to see if there's some connections to that event. All right. Chapter 49, verses 8 to 12. Judah receives a long and positive blessing from his father, permeated with statements that highlight positive qualities of leadership. As with the other blessings, Jacob's remarks project the personal qualities that Judah has already displayed onto his future descendants. Remarkably, while royalty has been associated chiefly with Joseph from chapter 37 onward, Judah is portrayed as being held in high esteem by his brothers. All right, blow this up. His father's son shall bow down before him. Chapter 49, verse 8. More than this, the nations will bring tribute to him, and to one of his descendants shall be the obedience of the peoples. Verse 10. Let me see this. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. So it seems like they are kind of reading into there that it is a descendant. Yeah. So the ESV Study Bible is reading that verse as saying that it's to one of his descendants, not to his tribe as a whole. In these words, Jacob predicts the great empire of David and the greater kingdom of Christ, the second David. This sets the tone for the chief aspect of messianic expectation in the Old Testament. The way that Abraham's blessing will come to the Gentiles will be by the ultimate heir of David reigning and incorporating the Gentiles into his benevolent empire. This explains why the installation of Jesus as the Davidic king is so important in the New Testament, with the implication that the long-awaited time of enlightening the Gentiles has finally arrived. For example, Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 to 20, and Romans chapter 1, verses 1 to 6, and chapter 15, verse 12. By way of emphasizing Judah's potential royal status, he is compared to a lion, Genesis chapter 49, verse 9. In addition, one of his descendants will hold a scepter and ruler's staff, the symbols of kingship, verse 10. If the phrase until tribute comes to him, verse 10, is taken to mean until Shiloh comes, all right, which is right here on the ESV footnote. So the footnote says, by a slight revocation, a slight emendation yields, all right, I say compared to the Septuagint, Syriac, and Targum, until he comes to whom it belongs. The Hebrew could be until Shiloh comes, or until he comes to Shiloh. All right. Then it could be an allusion to the departure of the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh in the time of Samuel, when the tribe of Judah, in the person of David, replaced the tribe of Ephraim as Israel's leading tribe. See Psalms chapter 78, verses 59 to 72, which summarizes the events recorded in the books of Samuel. Okay, we'll wait till get to that when we get there later. I do kind of want to let the story unfold for the most part, and So even though we get glimpses and connections from the ESV Study Bible notes, for the most part, I would like to let major pieces of the narrative. Let's kind of wait till we get there. Associated with the future Judahite king is a time of prolific grape harvest. In Genesis chapter 49, verse 11. The picture presented here accords with later statements that link the Davidic dynasty with agricultural prosperity. For example, Psalm chapter 72, verse 16, Amos chapter 9, verses 11 to 15. The royal line of Judah culminates with Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 to 16. Okay, and that's the genealogy there. All right, Zebulun. All right. Now, we've spoken before, and I'm interested to see the notes here, because as I was reading about, what I call the middle six, right? So you have the first four born to Leah, then the last two born to Rachel, the first four born to Leah, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, the last two born to Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. And you get the middle six boys, right? And we've discussed before how there's little talk about individually any of these guys in the narrative in Genesis, right? So, like, if it was, one of these middle six, instead of saying Zebulun did it, or Gad did it, or Issachar did it, right? It would say one of the brothers. But if one of the first four or one of the last two did it, we would get their actual name, and then maybe a story around it or something like that, right? But for the middle six, there's very little commentary on exactly what they themselves have done. So I'm interested to see how the ESV Study Bible deals with the pronouncements of Jacob on these sons, because we've talked earlier that it seems that he is pronouncing, hey, what certain things you have done, you will see in your future, or your descendants will see in their future, right? But we don't know this middle six much of what they have done, like individually, right? For Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, we've seen individually things done, right? Which is why we understand why Reuben is cursed, or at least not given a great pronouncement. The same with Simeon and Levi, right? We come in knowing, oh, okay, hey, Jacob was not happy with those three. I can see why, right? But then over the last few days, we've seen downfall, then a great growth in Judah, which helps us understand why he gets this great pronouncement from Jacob, right? It's like, okay, hey, that makes sense. But whatever he pronounces for these middle six, I don't know. We'll see. So let's see, without any further ado and my babbling, see how the ESV Study Bible knows this. All right, chapter 49, verse 13. Zebulun is listed here before Issachar, although according to chapter 30, verse 17 and 20, Issachar was born before Zebulun. Since Zebulun's territory did not actually extend to the Mediterranean Sea, cross-reference Joshua chapter 19, verses 10 and 16, Jacob's remarks are difficult to interpret. Yet major trading routes from the coast, which lay about 10 miles to the west, ran through the tribal region of Zebulun, providing an outlet to the sea and involvement by Zebulunites in the coastal commerce of exporting and importing, and thus living in Sidon by the sea, may be the substantive fulfillment of Jacob's poetic words. Furthermore, if the name Sidon, one of Phoenicia's leading cities, is used here as a collective term to refer to Phoenicia in general, then the statement that his border shall be at Sidon is quite apt. Let's actually read. All right. So Zebulun shall dwell at the shores of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Right. Yeah. And this one it doesn't say anything about his past at all. Um, just only his future. So you see why they don't deal with that. But they do go through and look at how the territories are laid out and saying that the Zebulonites, their territory does not extend all the way to the sea, but they are right next to um, Phoenicia. And so Sidon could be like a stand-in for the entire nation of Phoenicia. It's kind of like you know, I used to watch movies from like the '80s, and whenever there was someone from outside of the United States and they were going to America, right? Like, hey, we're going to America, right? They only went two places. They either went to New York or LA. That was it, right? Um, and so New York was the stand-in for America, or LA was the stand-in for America. There was no other place they went, other than that. And so Sidon, because it's a major city, could be, uh, that same type of deal, right? Um, where it's a stand-in for the collective in general, right? Chapter 49, verses 14 to 15. Although Jacob's blessing of Issachar emphasizes the strength of his descendants, it also indicates that, like a donkey, they will be forced to work for others. But precisely what situation is envisaged is unclear. Okay, so him making a pronouncement, it seems to be unclear in both directions, in the future and in the past. Right. Um, I personally don't remember a time when they became a servant and forced labor, became slaves. Issachar is a strong donkey crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to bear and became a servant at forced labor. Yeah, I don't. Sorry, guys, I have nothing. I'm trying to figure out what this is. The ESV Study Bible says that it's unclear to them as well. I don't remember a time where Issachar, like the people of Issachar themselves, became slaves or servants to either other tribes or them by themselves becoming slaves to others outside of Israel. Um, that is recorded in Scripture. So now there is time where Israelites get conquered, like as a whole, or once the kingdom split, the northern kingdom and southern kingdom, right? Where the northern kingdom, has their deal, which Issachar becomes part of the northern kingdom. But I don't know. I cannot reckon of what this might be referring to, backwards or forwards. So, as the ESV Study Bible says, it's unclear, right? Chapter 49, verses 16 to 18. Jacob sees in Dan and his sorry. Jacob sees in Dan and his descendants both positive and negative attributes. Their snake-like behavior, verse 17, is later reflected in their assault on the unsuspecting inhabitants of Laish, Judges chapter 18. Dan shall judge, Genesis chapter 49, verse 16. The name Dan is a play on the Hebrew word judge. See chapter 30, verse 6. This is when he got his name. All right. And I believe this is where either Leah or Rachel says God has judged between me and my sister. Let's see. Genesis chapter 30, verse 6. Rachel. God has judged me and has heard my voice and given me a sign. Okay. I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Chapter 49, verse 18. Jacob's pronouncements are interrupted by a brief prayer that highlights his concern for his descendants. Without divine deliverance, they will not survive. All right, so let's go take a look at it. So he's speaking about Dan. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. And then we get this line, I wait for your salvation, O Lord. All right. So he could be making these pronouncemements, and then, in the middle of it, oh, come get me now, Jesus. Come. I can't do this anymore, these daggone children. Come, Lord. All right. All right. Chapter 49, verse 19. The descendants of Gad, located in the region of Gilead, east of the Jordan River, will be attacked by raiders. Of necessity, Gadites will become skillful warriors who use stealth to fend off the invaders. The Hebrew word Gad sounds like the term raiders. Hebrew gadud and raid, Hebrew good. Good. You have Gad, good. Gad, gadud. All right. Okay. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. All right. Continuing on. All right, chapter 49, verse 20. Jacob briefly indicates that Asher's descendants will enjoy a prosperous future. Their territory along the coast plain of Akko provides fertile land and harbors for trade. Okay, so that's 20. Yeah. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. All right, so they're saying, based off of our knowledge of what happens later, the land they get, that this comes true because they get in a very fertile spot. All right, verse 21. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. All right, let's go down and read the note there. Chapter 49, verse 21. Compared to the graceful doe, the tribe of Naphtali will flourish, nourished by the rich natural resources of Upper Galilee. All right, good deal. Now we get to Joseph, chapter 49, verses 22 to 26. So let's see, the middle six, so Zebulun, Dan, Gad, Oh, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali. Okay. Um, Jacob reserves his longest blessing for Joseph, confirming his special standing among the brothers. The reference to God using a variety of divine titles, along with the emphasis on blessing, give his pronouncement an added dimension by describing Joseph as fruitful, verse 22. Jacob may be subtly alluding to Ephraim, whose name means twice fruitful. All right, and it says, see note on chapter 41, verses 50 to 52. Right, that's where it talked about when Joseph gave him his name. In spite of his brother's hostility toward him, chapter 49, verse 23, Joseph has survived, sustained by the mighty one of Jacob, verse 24. Anticipating the future, Jacob prays that Joseph's descendants will experience blessing upon blessing, blessings that exceed those shown to Abraham and Isaac, verses 25, 26, who was set apart from his brothers, verse 26. Jacob's final remarks may compare Joseph to the Nazarites, the holiest lay people in Israel, number 6, or it may simply be referring to his leading role among his brothers. Let's look at verse 26 real quick. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers. So, yeah, the set apart. When I first read it, I just read it as like he was separated from them during their lifetime, but uh, they're saying that there could be some allusions to other things as far as him being in a leading role among his brothers. Um, or that this could be a precursor to the Nazarite vow that's in Numbers chapter 6. All right, chapter 49, verse 27. Using the image of a wolf, Jacob reveals that the descendants of Benjamin will be aggressive warriors. For example, First Chronicles chapter 8, verse 40, and chapter 12, verse 2. It's interesting to man, it's very interesting to see this and really notice this for the first time because I believe King Saul comes from the tribe of Benjamin, and Saul of Tarsus, aka the Apostle Paul, is a Benjaminite as well. So we know the Apostle Paul had some some aggressiveness in him early on until his encounter with the Lord. Man, this phrase, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. This is very interesting because I think the same phrase is used in Acts 20, I think it is. Let's see. Oh man. Bible Gateway froze up on me again. Come on. Acts chapter 20. Okay. Um, let's just find it on the page. Cool. All right. It doesn't. It says fierce. I know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you. Dang, I thought it said ravenous wolves. Fierce wolves, not sparing the flock. So this is a this is kind of like a final speech that the Apostle Paul gives to some leaders, elders of the church in Ephesus, about wolves coming in sheep's clothing, and to watch out for that. So I was trying to see if you use the same language that Jacob uses here about the tribe of Benjamin, which is his tribe. So, all right. Chapter 49, verse 28. Jacob's blessing of his sons emphasizes the contribution that each will make to the 12 tribes of Israel. While the unity of 12 is assumed, the tribes of Judah and Joseph are clearly distinguished from all the others in terms of their leadership role within the nation. This outcome reflects in large measure how Joseph and Judah are portrayed within chapters 37 to 50. Beyond Genesis, the tribes of Ephraim and Judah are consistently portrayed as taking the lead, with the latter eventually providing the Davidic dynasty. Okay? Let me just read verse 28. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with a blessing suitable for them. For him. I think this is the first time we see the term tribe too. Let's get rid of that. Tribe. The sons of Israel. Okay. But as far as tribes of Israel, that's the first time we see it in Genesis chapter 49. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, this is very interesting. Knowing and vaguely knowing much the history of the tribes of Israel as we go along in Scripture, right? And my knowledge is limited. When I say limited, I know a decent portion of the highlights of the story, right? But as far as details, very foggy on details. But because I know enough of the highlights, I would say that a lot of this seems to, not a lot of it seems to, a lot of this comes true, as you know, you see in the ESV study notes. And so I think this is why you get some people who have a naturalistic worldview, right? When I say naturalistic, right, let's contrast it to supernatural, right? So naturalistic worldview that the world works and functions a certain way. Things only happen naturally. There's no such thing as the divine or divine power or divine inspiration, stuff like that. Right? If it can't be backed up by science, you know, all these different things, right? So when they come to the Bible and they come to the text and they see something in Genesis that, I mean, it works out perfectly with respect to how things are recorded later on in the Bible. The assumption is, oh, well, there's no way that this was written before the time because it's too perfect. It's way too perfect. Um, you know, uh, and I would say that that has more to do with the presuppositions of the interpreter than it does with the veracity of the scriptures, or the reliability of the scriptures, right, or the understanding of the dating of the scriptures, right? If you presume there's no such thing as prophecy, and uh, there is within scripture something said that is prophetic, um, a telling of the future, and then the future aligns with what is said, then you know, if you don't, believe in that ability, then you're like, oh, okay, hey, well, this means that this was written after the events. But that's just an assumption that comes with the, you know, that's just an assumption that's put onto the text. It's not necessarily actually saying what the text, it's not using other evidences that we've discussed our entire time through Genesis. All right. Okay. Chapter 49, verse 29 to chapter 50, verse 14. The death and burial of Jacob. Focusing on the death and burial of Jacob, this section falls into two parts. In chapter 49, verses 29 to 33, Jacob instructs his sons to bury him in Canaan. The process by which the sons fulfill this request is then recorded in chapter 50, verses 1 to 14. Give me 1 second. Okay. My bad. Let me I'm looking for something off screen. Um and if I find it, well, it depends on what I find. If I can let you guys know what came to my mind. Okay. Okay. All right. So unfortunately, it's not my word. So as so earlier this evening, um is my wife's birthday, right? And for her birthday party. And yes, my wife's birthday is the day before my mom's. Um, and before, so for her birthday party, she likes to do this extreme step stuff, so extreme hip hop stuff. And so, they'll play like hip hop songs. And depending on the age of the instructor, songs can be newer or older, whatever. So, and I'm saying that because I don't listen to hip hop anymore. Um, I really don't listen to music at all for the most part. But so, but because of we were there, certain songs and lyrics are in my mind, right? And so there's a song called uh, "The Birthday Song" by a rapper named 2 Chainz, and I believe it was played later on or earlier this evening. If not, I don't know. Somehow I got in my head. But in there, he gives instructions on where to bury him, and so I just thought about. I just thought about Jacob's instructions on where to bury him. Bury him in Canaan. Two Chains had a very different uh, location of where he would like to have been buried. And so, uh, yeah, I was getting a kick out of that. So, yeah. So, back to our our regularly scheduled program. Um, if you have not heard the song, um, I think maybe just look up the lyrics. You know, probably don't want to watch the video. The Bible speaks against uh, our eyes looking at certain things, and so yeah, you know, and then there's probably some language in there that's not the best either. So, but you know, or maybe you could probably just Google where would Two Chains like to be buried when he dies. Yeah. So, a little trivia for you, all right, and that might help you remember, right? Hey, Genesis chapter 49, Jacob gives instructions on where to bury him, right? So, you know, he's a precursor to you know many rappers, you know, 4,000 years later, you know, talking about where they would like to be buried, right? He gives burial instructions. All right. The process by which the sons fulfilled this request is then recorded in chapter 50, verses 1 to 14. Jacob's desire to be buried in Hebron reflects his belief that, as God has consistently promised, the future of his descendants will be in Canaan, not Egypt. Okay. All right. So it's like, hey, just like Abraham and Isaac made sure that their final resting place was in the land promised to them. Jacob was like, hey, that's what I'm going to, right? Because they believed that God would make good on his promise that their descendants would eventually be there, right? So, hey, don't bury me here in Egypt, bury me in Canaan, right? Because you know we want to be there when our descendants finally get here, all right? Genesis chapter 49, verses 29 to 33. In his last instruction to his sons, Jacob asked to be buried with his fathers in the cave purchased by Abraham from Ephron the Hittite. Verse 29, the account of the cave's purchase is recorded in chapter 23. All right, it says see notes, but you know, we really don't need to see the notes. I think we all remember that account where Abraham goes to the men of the city. It's like, hey, I would like to purchase a cave. They're like, you know, hey, man, you know, you good with us. You don't need to do that. He's like, no, please let me do it. And then there's a negotiation with Ephron where, you know, they negotiate the price of 400 shekels, I believe it is, or 400 silver pieces or silver coins. But yeah. All right. The burials of Abraham, chapter 49, verse 30, and Isaac, verse 31, are recounted in chapter 25, verses 8 to 10, and chapter 35, verses 27 to 29. While Jacob indicates that Rebekah and Leah were also buried at Machpelah, chapter 49, verse 30. This information is not recorded elsewhere in Genesis. Does he say Rebekah? Let me show you. I remember him saying Leah. I don't remember Rebecca. Genesis. Genesis. Genesis 49. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. You know, I've probably done this a bunch of times. I know for a fact that I would say Joseph when I wanted to say Jacob before, and vice versa. And I probably have done this with Rebecca and Rachel because of the first letter being the same. Um, where when I read Rebecca, I was thinking Rachel, right? Well, Jacob indicates that Rebecca, I'm thinking Rachel. I was like, did he talk about burying Rachel somewhere else? But yeah, okay. All right. Well, Jacob indicates that Rebecca and Leah were also buried at Machpelah, chapter 49, verse 30. This information is not recorded elsewhere in Genesis, right? Which is true, right? We never got that recording there, but Jacob provides that information here. And, you know, doesn't seem like it's far-fetched, though, right? Sarah was buried there. And so why not his sons and their wife? So Leah being the first wife of Jacob, and then Rachel being buried elsewhere. It would be fitting that Leah would get the burial at Machpelah. All right, was gathered to his people, verse 33. This idiom, commonly used in connection with dying, seems to reflect a belief in being reunited with others in the afterlife. All right, so good deal. All right, let's get to chapter 50. Chapter 50, verses 1 to 3. Joseph arranges for Jacob's body to be embalmed, verse 2. This was necessary in order to delay the normal process of putrefaction, and so enable Jacob's corpse to be transported to Hebron. Mummification was not practiced by the Hebrews, and so Joseph entrusts the task to Egyptian physicians. Verse 2. Since embalming was normally a religious practice involving priests, Joseph may have deliberately chosen to use physicians in order to distinguish his father's beliefs from those of the Egyptian priests. Apart from Jacob, the only other person in the Bible who was embalmed is Joseph. See verse 26. The 70 days of mourning reflects Egyptian royal practice according to some ancient sources. That is, Herodotus, History 2.86, but 72 days in Diodorus of Sicily, Histories 1.72, suggesting that Jacob is being shown very high honor. For the Israelites, the period of mourning was normally between 7 and 30 days. It is unclear, however, whether the two periods mentioned are consecutive or concurrent. All right, so Jacob has a much longer day of period of mourning than what is normally recorded in the Hebrew scriptures. Saying him being highly honored. And then the notes here about the Egyptian royal practice, according to the other ancient sources, again, it lends validity to at least to the story, right? Hey, this is something that was done around that time, right? In this place, right? So it starts to ground the story in history, right? Which speaks against those that I just talked about that have certain presuppositions, and they arrive to their conclusion because of how they already believe, rather than allowing the evidence of the text itself and archaeology and history to help inform what should be believed about the text. Chapter 50, verses 4 to 6. Joseph seeks permission from Pharaoh to bury his father in Canaan. Yeah. Chapter 50, verses 7 to 9. Probably as a result of the high esteem in which Joseph was held, the funeral procession comprises a large number of prominent Egyptian officials and public figures. Let's look at that. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company, right? So, this, I mean, again, to me, these little notes right here that make us just stop and slow down in the text, to me, price is worth the price of admission, right? It's not just simply the fact that he died, right? But he died, and then, hey, there was a royal event around his death, right? And we have these, in our day, right? When someone either very famous or a high profile official in the government or something like that dies, there's a televised event for the funeral, right? Where, there's long motorcades and high profile people are there at the event. And, there's, all these things that go around it. And Jacob got that, right? Jacob got that, not because of what Jacob did, but because of what Joseph did. Okay? So, pretty cool. Pretty cool. At least I find it fascinating. All right. Chapter 50, verses 10 to 11. Coming to the threshing floor of Atad, the funeral procession halts to mourn for 7 days. The precise location is not known. The expression beyond the Jordan, verse 11, is sufficiently ambiguous to place Atad in either Canaan or Transjordan. Threshing floors are normally on an elevated place so that the wind could be used to separate the chaff from the grain. The week of mourning made such an impact on the local population that they named the place Abel Mizraim, verse 11, which means the mourning of Egypt. Chapter 50, verses 12 to 14. These verses confirm that Jacob's request in chapter 49, verses 29 and 32 was carried out. Abraham's purchase of the cave at Machpelah, chapter 50, verse 13, is recorded in chapter 23, right, which we discussed earlier. Chapter 50, verses 15 to 21, Joseph reassures his brothers. Following the burial of Jacob, the brothers are fearful that Joseph will take revenge on them for all the evil that they did to him. Chapter 50, verses 15 and 17. Afraid to address Joseph face to face, the brothers send a message confessing their guilt and seeking his forgiveness. Man, these brothers. Can't even come to his face. Got to send a message. Come on, man. Come on. How sincere are you? Right? Got to send a text. Change Facebook stats. I'm dating myself here. But come on, man. Couldn't even come face to face. Got to send a message. Right? So the boy's not looking too good. Chapter 50, verses 18 to 21. Probably encouraged by news of Joseph's reaction to their message, the brothers came and fell down before him. Once again, their obeisance and words, behold, we are your servants. Fulfill Joseph's dreams chapter 37, verses 5 to 10, echoing what he had said previously. See chapter 45, verses 5 to 9. Okay, yeah, this is what we went over yesterday, that God sent him and not them, right? And I was remembering this verse yesterday. You guys saw that as I was searching around things. I was remembering this idea that what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And I was like, we'll talk about it today, but I probably just should have used it yesterday because of how it is used today. But it definitely fit more in the conversation we're having about God's sovereignty, right? Joseph stresses that God transformed their evil into good, and that as a result, many people have been kept alive. This principle that God ultimately overrules human sin for his glory and the ultimate good of mankind is important in Scripture. The crucifixion is the same, is the prime example of it, right? Which we discussed yesterday. Acts chapter 3, verses 13 and 26, and Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Joseph's gracious, forgiving attitude unites the family. Like the lives of Jacob and Esau, Joseph's life was marred by deadly hatred between brothers. In both cases, the story ends with the offended brothers offering full forgiveness to those who mistreated him. Chapter 33, verse 4. Man, that is a connection. Come on now, ESV Study Bible. That'll preach, right? Remember, we talked about when we made the connection between Genesis 33 and how Esau, ran, embraced, and kissed Jacob, right? Doing the same actions that Laban did to Jacob, and connecting that with Luke chapter 15, and how, and even then, the ESV Study Bible note said that Esau was acting as God does, right? And so we get this, right? Full forgiveness and embracing by brothers who were the offended party, and they provide forgiveness to their brothers who had offended them. Like I said, guys, the gospel is preached on every page of the Bible, and here we just get another example of one, the reconciliation that God brings to two parties that have conflicts, right? The reconciliation we have between God and man, and also two, the idea of forgiveness. One, the forgiveness that we receive from God, but also two, because of that forgiveness, the forgiveness that we can have toward others, even if we have been unjustly treated by them. So that's a great connection. I would not have made that myself. That is awesome connection there. Okay. All right. Finishing up here. Okay. Chapter 50, verse 22 to 26. The death of Joseph. The final 60 years of Joseph's life in Egypt are passed over in almost complete silence. Apart from briefly mentioning the birth of some children, this final section of Genesis focuses on the death of Joseph, as it brings the account of his early life to a conclusion. It looks to the future, anticipating the time when God will bring the Israelites out of Egypt and return them to the land of Canaan. Chapter 50, verses 22 to 23, Joseph lives long enough to see the grandchildren or great-grandchildren of Ephraim. The precise sense of third generation is disputed. Okay. Let's take a look. Looky here. All right. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Um, Joseph lived 110 years, and Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. Yeah, the way that it reads, yeah, is it the third generation starting with Joseph? So Joseph being the first, Ephraim being the second, his Ephraim's children being the third, or Ephraim being the first, his children being the second, their children being the third, right? So is this grandchildren or great grandchildren? We don't know, but he's able to witness, hey, there are others. Okay. Chapter 24, verses 24 to 26. With death imminent, Joseph makes arrangements for his bones to be taken to Canaan. Unlike his father Jacob, see chapter 49, verses 29 to 32, Joseph does not focus on the burial site at Machpelah. Rather, he confidently affirms that God will lead the Israelites out of Egypt to Canaan. When this happens, Joseph wants his bones to be transported there. Later, Moses fulfills this instruction in Exodus chapter 13, verse 19. And Joseph's remains are eventually buried at Shechem, Joshua chapter 24, verse 32. All right. I remember, man, the first time, this was a couple years ago, we were going through a series in Exodus, and and our pastor brought that up in Exodus chapter 13 about Joseph's bones. And I immediately remember thinking in the middle of the sermon, man, that is some faith. Like as he's dying, he's like, look, at some point, God's going to bring you back to the land of Canaan, carry my bones there, um, and bury my bones there. All right. Take my bones from here, carry them to that land. Man, that is some faith. Not only that, not only the faith of Joseph, but also too the faith of those who had been in Egypt that long, right? You know, generation after generation after generation, holding on to the bones, right? And that being kept around because, hey, someday the Lord's going to take us out of here, bring us back to the promised land. Someday the Lord's going to take us out of here, bring us back to the promised land, right? At no time throughout the generations did someone say, man, get rid of these daggone bones, taking up space, right? It's like those bones were a reminder of Joseph's faith and a reminder of God's covenant that was made between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the people kept, at least somebody. It's like, hey, look, I'll hold on to them to the next generation. And then they held on to them up to the Exodus. And then after they got through the desert, and once they finally settled in the land, then they buried them at Shechem of all places, right? And because we've gone through and we've done a lot of work, um, you know, Shechem is, it's kind of planted in our minds, right? It's not just some random place in the Bible, right? We're like, oh man, we know where Shechem's at, right? We have thoughts about whenever we see the word Shechem, right? Certain events come into our mind, right? Okay, so Pretty cool. All right, embalmed. See note in chapter Genesis chapter 50, verse 1 to 3, right? Which is what we read about uh, Jacob being embalmed. Now, the first audience of Genesis has the relevant parts of the backstory to the book of Exodus, which relates events much closer to their own time and indeed part of their own experience, right? Yes, this is true. All right, so now that we have concluded Genesis, tomorrow we start the book of Exodus, and yeah, we're set up now, right? It's almost like we've ended the prequel, right, of what happens in Egypt in the book of Exodus, right? So, or we can, in season one or whatever, so I'm trying to connect it to, in terms of how we intake story now. So, because I mean, we don't necessarily live in a culture that reads much, so. But we do watch some. We watch some TV, some movies, some Netflix, and chill. We do all that now. We binge watch, right? So, you know, yeah. So maybe we got the series, the part one of the series, right? Now we're getting ready to go part two. So hopefully, if you stuck around this long, if you've gone through all of Genesis with us, hopefully you are excited about Exodus to try to see, hey man, where does the story go from here? Right? We got here to Egypt. How does God take this people that he promised that they would go into a land and they would be there and they would suffer for 400 years? Okay. How does he get them back to this land? There's an anticipation that they'll come back. There's also too the promise, right, that we saw in Genesis chapter 15. Let's look at that before we sign off. Genesis 15. I think it's verse 6. No. Where is it? All right, here we go. Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. And the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs. Right? So this is we're getting it now. Hey, we're in Egypt. And we'll be servants there. We haven't gotten to that part yet. They aren't servants yet, right? But they are in a land that's not theirs. Okay? And they will be afflicted for 400 years. So God tells that. Okay? And we talked about yesterday, we talked about God's sovereignty, right? And a lot of times, we don't know what he knows, right? Well, here, he actually gives them that, hey, you got your descendants are going to be afflicted for 400 years, right? I wonder how many times, when there is talk about the covenant with God and God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the promise of descendants, the promise of nations, the promise of kings, and all this stuff. How many times this got brought up, though, right? That, hey, in that land, you'll be servants there and will be afflicted for 400 years. I wonder how many times that was brought up, right? Yeah. Continuing on, though, but I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve. Okay. Hey, how will that happen? Right. Let's see. So we have yet to see them be servants. We have yet to see the affliction for 400 years, and we have yet to see the judgment. So we are anticipating coming up in Exodus that we're going to see them become servants. We will see them afflicted for 400 years, but we also would see God bring judgment upon the nation that they serve, right? So, and we're assuming Egypt, right? So he's going to bring judgment upon the nation of Egypt. And then finally, afterwards, they shall come out with great possessions. Okay. So, I mean, this is setting us up, right? This is almost this right here is almost like a trailer of what's going to happen in the book of Exodus, right? Hey, they're going to become servants. Let's see how that happens. Let's see what goes on with the affliction for 400 years. Let's see, how does God judge this nation? Won't that be a doozy? And then somehow they're going to come out with great possessions, right? How does that happen? They're going to be servants, afflicted. God judges the nation, and then people come out with great possessions. How does that happen? All right. All right. So that is the precursor to our study in Exodus, right? Which we will get to tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow is probably going to be a little longer because we have the introductions and stuff. After looking at the pages, though, it doesn't look like the introduction is too long, but who knows? Who knows exactly how long that'll be? But we'll see. We'll see. So, thank you so much for. Oh, I forgot. We got to do the history of salvation verses. Okay. All right. Let's do this. All right, man. We're done with Genesis. Goodness. All right. So it only took, not even the first 3 weeks of the year. Get it done, man. Get it done. So first book of the Bible. So, so this, and, hey, congratulations. This is your first time getting through the entire book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Congrats. All right. And now you not only have you gotten through it, you got a lot of good information about how the book is structured a bit, or how you see certain patterns over and over again, how it connects to historically to things of its time. Yeah, so great stuff there. All right, so we know chapter 48 to chapter 50. We have 4 verses tonight. So chapter 48, verse 5, the transformation of one tribe, Joseph, into two further illustrates the fruitfulness of blessing to the line of offspring that God has chosen and blessed. Amen. Right? The fruitfulness of blessing of the offspring that God has chosen and blessed. Amen. Chapter 49, verse 10. At this early point, God already reveals that through Judah will come a line of kings, leading finally to Christ, the great eternal King. Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 to 16. Chapter 50, verse 20. God uses even evil to work out his good purposes, foreshadowing the time when he will bring the supreme good, namely eternal salvation, out of the wicked actions of the men who condemned and crucified Christ. Acts chapter 2, verse 23, and chapter 4, verses 25 to 28. Chapter 50, verse 24. God's promises stand firm through generations. Chapter 12, verse 7. Chapter 15, verses 13 to 14. His faithfulness is expressed climactically in Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20. All right. I pray that this has blessed you, that you have gained a greater understanding of the book of Genesis, that you are gaining a greater understanding of the Bible, that ultimately you are gaining a greater understanding of God, which is leading to a greater relationship with him. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.